and welcome to the Islamic Finance Show. Throughout this series, we've been examining various aspects of Islamic finance. Today, we'll be discussing the role gold plays in the Islamic finance space. Gold has traditionally been limited in the way it could be traded as a result of Islamic rulings. However, the introduction of the Shariah Gold Standard in 2016 opened up possibilities for gold investments in the Islamic finance sector. Joining me on the show today to give us an insight into the Shariah Gold Standard is Natalie Dempster, Managing Director of Central Banks and Public Policy at the World Gold Council. And also joining me is Sharia advisor specialising in the structuring of Islamic financial products, Dr. Humayun Dar. He's also the Director General at the Cambridge Institute of Islamic Finance. Welcome to you both. Good to have you here. Humayun, if I could come to you first, gold has always been known as a ribawi item. For those of our audience who are not familiar with this term, could you just give us an insight into what that means and what was the impact?
Riba means unequal exchange of any commodity or any currency. Gold is one of the 6 commodities which are specifically mentioned in the traditions of the Prophet. Hence, it is very clear that if gold is exchanged in unequal quantities, this would be prohibited. This would be deemed as prohibited interest. And other thing about gold being a currency is that it must be exchanged on spot. So these two things about gold are specific to this commodity and of course to other commodities like this, silver.
Okay, so Natalie, clearly there was all these restrictions around trading gold, and clearly there would have been, that's a lot of business loss for the Islamic finance sector. So was there a great demand for it to be looked at and to see if there was any way forward on this?
It's probably worth putting it in the context of what the World Gold Council does. So, we were an organisation set up back in 1987 to help develop the global gold market. And the council runs lots of projects either aimed at improving education and understanding about gold, improving access to gold, or improving standards. And we were actually working on a completely unrelated project at the time. It was after the global financial crisis, and regulators were putting in place new liquidity buffers that banks would have to hold to protect against future crises. The regulatory community internationally had defined what those assets should be, and the vast majority of funds were seen to flow into government bonds because those were the deepest and most liquid markets. But Islamic banks were going to have an issue with that because these are, of course, interest-bearing assets, so they could not be held by Islamic banks. Yeah, exactly. So the World Gold Council thought that gold might be an appropriate solution. So we were across in, I think it was Malaysia at the time, talking to the regulatory community and to other stakeholders about whether or not gold could be a substitute for government bonds in that context. And I have to say we were surprised by one of the responses which said gold is not Sharia compliant. Now, that did seem odd, given, as we've just heard, the long history that gold has in Islamic finance. We have the gold dinar, but we've also had, gold being used as jewellery, gold artefacts. It has a very deep and long historical context in Islam. But where the confusion arose was over gold's permissibility as a commodity, as opposed to a currency. And that's where the disagreement between scholars appeared to be happening. And there was also a lot of disagreement about the way that gold products could be traded and structured in order to be Sharia compliant.
So how did you move forward on that in order to get it certified as Sharia compliant, the trading element?
So it was a very long process. First of all, we tested that hypothesis. This was something that we heard in Malaysia. We then went to the Middle East and we spoke to hundreds, literally hundreds of stakeholders in the region to try and get a better assessment of the view of gold as an investment asset, and in particular the view of gold products, modern day gold products. And they were pretty much split. It wasn't that the entire community said you can't invest in gold as an asset. About 50% thought you could invest in gold as an asset, but the other 50% weren't sure. And there was a fear, I think, of non-compliance among certain investors that were preventing them going into the Shariah Gold Standard. So we approached a set of scholars, Amini advisors, and we asked them to opine on the matter for us. So they again looked at existing rulings, they looked at the disparate opinions that were out there, and their recommendation was to approach a body called AOFI that sets harmonised Sharia standards, and to try and get a harmonised Sharia standard issued for gold so that once and for all there was a global ruling on whether or not gold was permissible as an investment asset, and also how gold products had to be traded and structured.
And AOFI, of course, are pivotal in setting standards, Sharia standards. So they give the green light. So the Sharia Gold Standard was introduced in 2016?
2016, yes. I mean, we were delighted when AOFI agreed to take the project on, because there was already a standard for currency. But they agreed that there should be a separate standard for gold, and they set up a subcommittee, and we then engaged in a very lengthy and inclusive consultation process. So the consultation process itself ran for just slightly under 2 years. We had roundtables in Malaysia, in the UAE, in Sudan, in Oman. So this really was a very consultative process, and involved a huge amount of scholars and of AOFI's time. And as you say, it was finally issued in December 2016.
Humayun, despite the numerous Sharia scholars involved and AOFI, one of the biggest bodies around implementing Sharia standards, critics would argue that this was made Sharia compliant, that essentially they took a round peg and tried to fit it into a square hole. What are your thoughts on that?
I must clarify that gold is a Sharia compliant asset. Okay, so there is nothing impermissible about gold. It is a sensitive commodity or a sensitive asset from the viewpoint of trading in it. Okay, and because of the problems associated with trading, it has historically been not looked into as an acceptable asset class in Islamic banking and finance.
Is that because of the difference in opinions with scholars?
When it comes to trading in gold and silver and currencies, there are very clear rulings, and there is no disagreement, I should say, amongst the mainstream Sharia scholars on the trading aspect of these. It is a difficult commodity from Sharia viewpoint, and I would say that this is a breakthrough in modern Islamic banking and finance, that a body like Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions has taken a stance on it and has come up with a Sharia standard which would allow Muslims in general to look into gold as a permissible asset class in financial matters.
Now, Humayun has said that this was a breakthrough. Can you perhaps share with us the benefits of the Sharia Gold Standard? How will it benefit the community?
Yeah, I think before the standard, as was said, it wasn't that there wasn't investment in things like coins and bars. There absolutely was. But the difference was that modern gold products had largely failed to develop in Islamic countries. And by modern, I mean things like gold exchange traded funds, gold accumulation funds that are offered through the banking system, internet investment gold products, because all of the elements of those products, the way in which they had to be traded and structured, hadn't been defined. The difference that you see 2 years on from the standard is that those products have started to launch. And actually something that the World Gold Council did as a follow-up is we set up a new website called shariahgold.com, where you can download the standard itself, and you can also look at the role of gold in Islamic finance, plus all of those new products that have been issued are listed on that website. So I think that's been the big difference, is you've seen it move from a bar and coin industry to one that allows Islamic investors to tap into more modern day gold products.
Now, you mentioned some of the products that have been introduced. Do you think it's still early days? Do you think there's still room for more products to be offered in that space?
Absolutely. We know of several that are in the pipeline. I think there's about 9 or 10 on the site at the moment, and I'd say there's at least the same amount under development. So it's done exactly what the World Gold Council hoped it would do, which is to stimulate the development of these modern day gold products and let Islamic consumers and investors have a choice in the way that they invest in gold.
Okay, and now Humayun, in terms of the breakthrough that you mentioned and now the new products that are available in this space and will continue to be available moving forward, has the reception been good? What's the uptake like?
There has been a lot of interest in gold in Islamic banking and finance right from the beginning. One strand of interest was in a gold-based currency, gold dinar, for example, which has not been very successful. There have been a few implementations here and there, especially in one state in Malaysia, in Kelantan, but the experiment was not very successful. I believe that with this kind of new focus on gold, in the context of AOFE Sharia standard, new type of products would emerge. I am very hopeful that one day we would find a gold-based cryptocurrency, for example. This is one area which has relevance to the needs of Muslim consumers. Okay. Investments, as Natalie mentioned, okay, this is something which is very mainstream. And hopefully with these new products, we would come up with some solutions which have proven to be very difficult in Islamic banking and finance. One solution which I have personally been looking into is to come up with a liquidity management solution which is based on the trading of gold and silver, especially gold because it's a better commodity as compared to silver, and it has better storage advantage. So I would say that with the new focus on fintech, so combining fintech with gold may give rise to a new range of Islamic financial products.
However, Humayun, I understand, fintech is huge and it will continue to grow. It's a very exciting area of finance. However, already there's a lot of controversies around cryptocurrencies in terms of Sharia scholars, some who deem them permissible, others who deem them impermissible. So we've already got some stumbling blocks to begin with. And, you talk about a cryptocurrency based on gold. So do you think there will be bigger hurdles moving forward?
Now, when I refer to a gold-based cryptocurrency, it's actually very close to Islamic Sharia requirements. The cryptocurrency, I don't want to name any cryptocurrencies, but most of the cryptocurrencies, they are based on an algorithm only. Okay. In case of a gold-based cryptocurrency, or maybe if the term is misleading, we can call it a gold-based digital currency, there is a huge scope. And I think, okay, this would be probably realization of the vision of those who advocated the use of gold in the form of gold dinar.
Okay, and Natalie, the Shariah Gold Standard has obviously opened up investment for the Muslim community. However, the Shariah Gold Standard, is it just for Muslims or is it available for wider investment?
I would say it's absolutely available for wider investment, and in fact, if you look at the elements of the standard, they mirror very much actually the development of the gold ETFs. For instance, so if you look at the principles in the standard, which is that gold products need to be fully allocated, that they need to be traded on a spot basis, that you can't sell something before you already own it. When you look at products like the gold ETFs, they're actually very similar to what's developed in the West.
So it's essentially opened up a platform for everybody, the gold standard.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Humayun, Dubai in particular is rising through the ranks as a purchase and investment destination, as it accounts for 20% of world sales of precious metals. Why is it so important? What's of particular significance of this to the UAE?
The UAE is very central to the markets where there is huge demand for gold. UAE is next to in the Indian subcontinent, where there is probably the largest consumption of gold for jewelry. Okay. So because of this close proximity with the markets where gold is used for jewelry, Dubai has received a lot of significance. Dubai gold market, whatever be the economic conditions, okay, there is always hustle and bustle in the Dubai gold market. And Dubai has been looking into developing this gold market into something which is more digital, which is more virtual. And again, I would refer to this gold Sharia standard. This might help the government of the UAE, especially the government of Dubai, to develop Dubai/UAE as a global hub for Islamic economy. Under Islamic economy, of course, there is huge emphasis on Islamic finance, but if we look into the centers like DMCC, which is a Dubai equivalent of London Metal Exchange, there, if products based on gold are introduced, they would have a lot of demand coming from the neighboring countries.
And what's interesting is, you mentioned the average consumer. Traditionally, I don't think it's any secret, Muslims have used gold for many reasons, for marriages, for wealth, keeping wealth in families. Natalie, how does the Sharia Gold Standard impact on your everyday Muslim consumer who might want to, buy gold?
Well, I think it's about choice. It's about choice of product. Before, as I say, the market was heavily concentrated in physical bar and coins. But one of the things that the standard looked at was that gold could be Sharia compliant if it was both held physically and if it was held on a constructive basis. And that being able to hold gold in a Sharia compliant way on a constructive basis was very important for allowing these more modern day gold products to develop. For instance, in China, gold on your mobile phone is extremely popular. People like the convenience of being able to, buy it in the same, just as easy as you would make a phone call. And it's about allowing those type of products to develop and giving the consumers ease and choice and access to gold.
And talking about ease and choice, as you mentioned, we're moving forward in an increasingly digital world. So some of that integrated with the Sharia Gold Standard, as you previously mentioned, that's just going to give more and more investment choices, not just to those in the business, not in those in the sector, but your average everyday consumers too.
Definitely. I think the biggest application would be on the monetary side. A lot of families traditionally, they have held gold as an investment. However, with this non-physical kind of availability of products, that would allow people to have more exposure to this asset class in such a way that this would be tax efficient from Islamic viewpoint as well. Holding physical gold, it has certain implications for zakat. However, if gold is held in a virtual way, the rulings of zakat, which is an Islamic tax or Islamic levy, may be different. And I think this is something which Sharia scholars would be looking into very carefully.
And do you think the Sharia Gold Standard, Humayun, was a good move towards mainstreaming Islamic finance?
I'm not sure about mainstreaming Islamic finance, but definitely this is a good move to bring a focus on gold and asset class in Islamic finance. Islamic finance has faced limitations in terms of exposure to asset classes. Historically, Islamic finance has been very much focused towards the real estate, for example. About 20-25 years back, equity was brought into Islamic finance as an acceptable asset class, and that was a revolution. I would say that a similar kind of breakthrough has happened in the form of Shariah Gold Standard. This would open a lot of doors for Islamic banks and financial institutions in terms of their choice for investing in viable asset classes.
So Natalie, based on what Humayun's just said, so can the Shariah Gold Standard, power Islamic finance to the next stage of development as a new asset class?
I think so, and this was a message that we heard loud and clear during the kind of initial testing hypothesis phase, should we go ahead with this process? And it was this point on the limitations of assets, that Islamic consumers and investors just didn't have the same choice, the same diversity of assets to invest in, apart from sukuk, real estate, they don't have a whole lot of choice. So allowing gold to be bought and sold in this way has introduced an entirely new asset class for them, and an asset class that is, a proven diversifier, not just against conventional assets, but against other Islamic assets, that is a great store of wealth, and that, is an asset that's going to provide security during times of crisis.
Okay, Humayun, just very briefly, moving forward, what are your thoughts on the future of gold, the Shariah Gold Standard, and in the Islamic finance sector?
Commodities are going to play a very instrumental role in Islamic finance. There is no doubt about that. And gold would be on top of these commodities. It is a commodity which is very much loved by Muslims. Okay. Muslims have an emotional attachment with gold. And with this development, they would be going closer to the ideal of having a gold-based currency.
Okay, unfortunately, there we must leave it. We're out of time, but Humayun, Natalie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
If you'd like to comment or share your thoughts and opinions on what we've discussed today, then tweet us at Islam Channel or contact us via Facebook on Islam Channel TV with hashtag The Islamic Finance Show. Unfortunately, this is the last episode in the series of The Islamic Finance Show, but we do hope you've enjoyed it, and the series has offered a good insight into the world of Islamic finance. I'd like to thank not only my guests who have joined me in the studio today, but all those who've participated in the series. And as always, a huge thanks to you at home for watching. Goodbye.